Okay, so how else does one learn gazing? Oh, that's the best way. There's so many. There's this variation of that way called water monkeys, which is a mind blower in itself. The couple doesn't have to be lovers, but why not? But whatever. Doesn't have to be lovers, but probably is going to be lovers. You're standing in a chest deep pool of pretty warm water, not cold. It doesn't have to be chest deep. Needs to be a little deep. Anyway, the man is like the Haruka, and he's going to end up dancing. The woman's like the Dakini, and she just wraps her legs around him and her arms around him, and they're gazing, and she's kind of getting danced around the ballroom. A lot of circular stuff, I think, or just you make a circle, but you also are twirling, or whatever. You're just dancing out there, doing whatever you want to do. Could be naked, but there's not like intercourse, but there would be touching of the genitals, but it's mainly the gazing. Does the genitals adds a real connects the circuit and makes the energy go. Makes it a lot more fun. It's like incredible foreplay. The greatest foreplay ever. You don't really have to do much foreplay. You're not kissing, you could kiss, but that's not what it is. It's just gazing. But it's a pretty sexy scene. I could do that forever. In a pool or in the ocean. In the ocean, then the water moves you a lot. The ocean's almost the best because the ocean does a lot of the work. It's very romantic. But you take that in the bedroom, love making is the biggest thing for gazing that could ever be in a way, except for, Shams and Rumi, Who knows what the hell was going on there, but two, one awakened being and one guy who's destined to be an awakened being, those two guys get in a room and start gazing. And I don't think it's any better than that, because there's a book called Rumi, Gazing at the Beloved, The Art of Realization. I forget the name, by Will Johnson. He describes a lot about gazing in that book. He teaches a lot about gazing. There's Shams and there's Rumi. And it's the 13th century, maybe the 14th century, and Tabriz, Turkey. It's kind of Eastern Turkey. Shams is like the modern day equivalent of Muhammad. Muhammad was born in the 700s, and now we're in the 1400s. So 700 years later, and a lot of the really high guys, they just model their life on Muhammad, what he did. He fasted a lot, he sat in caves a lot, he did this, he did that mentally, he prayed, fasted, went by himself. Anyway, Shams turned himself into the right hand of God, shall we say. He became a being like that. But he's very lonely. It's very lonely sometimes being that guy, Especially he had not a very pleasant personality. When fools would come to him, he would tell them to fuck off, or he just gave back to you what you gave him a lot, and it made him unpopular, and he couldn't hardly be around people. But anyway, he says to God, I'm very lonely, I would like to have a companion to give my wisdom to and receive it and share it. And God said to Shem's, even at the cost of your life. And Shem's thought about it a little bit and said, yes. So anyway, God is directing Shem's. Rumi is this preacher in this little town. His dad was a great Muslim preacher. Great preacher. But little, 30 students, nobody ever heard of him. But he wrote a book and taught from it, and Rumi was teaching, from the book, and his father taught him. And anyway, he was a bright guy, he was doing some good work teaching these guys, and they all loved him, His 20 students loved him. Thought he was a great teacher, But Shem's comes along, and Shem's says to him, do you want to understand the words or do you want to understand the sense? And Rumi says something erudite and smart back to him. Shem shoves all his father's books into the well and said, come with me and I'll teach you the sense. So they go off together, go on like a 40-day retreat. Dark retreat. They come back and Rumi is completely transformed. Now he is like a divine madman of God. Every word he speaks is poetry, and everything he does is, and he's just on fire for God, but he's on fire for Shem's. He's just devoted to Shem's. He thinks Shem's hung the moon. He thinks Shem's created this wonderful, blissful realm he's living in. Turns out the students are not all on board for this new transformation, and they can't figure out what happened to their nice little preacher that's turned into this madman, and why is he so crazy for this grumpy old fart? And Shem's, and they finally run Shem's off, say, get out of here, we can't stand you. And what you've done to our preacher is beyond the beyond. We're going to kill you for this. And so he leaves. And Remy goes nuts. He just says, where's Shem's? Where's Shem's? Shem's on the moon. Where is he? And he just all day long cries and says, where's Shem's? So, Shem's comes back, and they go around again. This time they do just kill him and bury him in the desert. And Rumi, is very upset then, but still he writes all these poems and does all this great Sufi teaching. But it was the power of the gazing. In 40 days, 2 days, and 6 days, and 10 days. Gazing with your teacher, but you can't get that job, Your teacher is too quick for you. He doesn't, a teacher doesn't pass out those jewels very easily, if at all, But you can just sit there when he's on the throne and you're sitting at the bottom. It's totally available to anybody. You can gaze with him and go to town. So, how do you gaze? It's just in the basic meditation instruction. You look down in basic meditation, but then you begin to look up. So as you look up, that's part of the gazing. But until your gaze is stabilized, there's no point in looking up. While your gaze is down, you're constantly learning to stabilize your gaze. In the beginning, just as your mind is all over the place, your eyes are all over the place, and they work together. However your eyes are going, your mind's going. However your mind's going, your eyes tend to go, but you got to train your eyes. You got to train your mind, you got to train your eyes. And essentially, you're training your eyes to gaze. Gaze means I don't always have tunnel vision. I'm always trying to pick something out of the background. Gazing means you have no desire to pick anything out of the background and make it the foreground. That is neurotic. It's grasping after. The essence of grasping after is to grab something with your eyes and fixate on it. And you can teach yourself not to do that. Just as you can teach yourself not to grasp with your mind. Just as you can teach yourself not to grasp with your hearing. Just as you can teach yourself not to grasp with that one. You can teach yourself not to grasp with everything. All your senses and your mental power. You just don't grab anything and make it the foreground. Everything is, the background is all there is. And that's enlightenment. You don't try to concretize anything. Everything is open and flowing and as it is. And they talk a lot about taste and one taste. What's one taste? Well, it's gazing is one taste. Resting your mind in nature, your mind is one taste. And then that just creates a certain electricity, and that electricity on your tongue is one taste. Your tongue is a conductor of electricity in a very powerful way. It wasn't before, but it has a certain taste at that point. Your tongue being alive is a taste. So everything is one taste. Again, it starts with resting your mind, nature, mind, thoughts. It starts with Rigpa has two aspects. You know, you can't create Rigpa. Rigpa is just there, and you either tune into it or you don't. But you don't tune into Rigpa by chasing your thoughts around. That would not be Rigpa, that would be Sims. You rest your mind in nature, your mind, and Rigpa arises. But then a thought will always arise out of that. How you handle that thought is kind of the secret of the whole thing. Whether you create a war with that thought or create a tea party with that thought is the point of the whole thing. You know, besides rest your mind in nature, your mind, which is always the ground of everything. But what you do when a thought arises is the point of everything, which will always happen. And if you just don't grasp after anything, don't grasp onto a foreground being that thought, it exists in the great background of things, and you just let it go back into the background, and then everything's good. Go from bliss to bliss to bliss to bliss. Otherwise, you go from suffering to suffering to suffering to suffering. Your choice. Well, the way you do it is by gazing. You get good with thoughts, but that doesn't change your ayatanas necessarily. But you start doing with gazing, all of a sudden your ayatanas begin to change. You start doing with hearing, then your ayatanas change further. You start doing with ayatanas change further. You touch, ayatanas change further. Pretty soon you're lined up like the Buddha's lined up. Your ayatanas are all awakened.